So, I guess initial thoughts on the Knicks, and because I feel like in my conversations with some of our readers, our listeners, my friends, the people around me, it still feels like the Knicks are being discounted as like a legitimate team in the Eastern Conference, where it's that lagging effect, right? We see it with players all the time, where it takes younger ascending players some time to get the respect. And because the Knicks have been, I'd say, lost in the wilderness for a while.
My whole life.
Maybe not my whole life, but most of my lifetime they have been. It feels like their reputation, at least in Philadelphia, is lagging behind what their performance has been this season. I mean, this is a team that, one, has a guy that I don't think he's going to make first team All-NBA, but he's a guaranteed All-NBA guy. I think locked in at second team at worst in Jalen Brunson. I think since they brought in OG Anunoby, the results when him and Brunson have been available and they've had most of their guys healthy have been just almost unspeakably good. And look, it's a Tom Thibodeau team. They play tough, physical, hard-nosed basketball. In many ways, they're the sort of team that has given the Sixers problems in the playoffs. They're gonna kill you on the glass. They're gonna never let up on the defensive end. They're just, it's the level of persistence you get from New York for 48 minutes, and in many cases in overtime, when their best players are going to be playing 45 minutes under Tibbs. I just think it is a team you should have a healthy respect for. And I'm not sure people really understand how good Jalen Brunson is now. Like, he played at Nova and people are familiar with him. He had some good moments in Dallas in the playoffs. He even was very good last year. He's gone up even another level this season.
All-NBA.
And that assignment, whoever, and it's going to be a committee like we saw against Jimmy Butler, right? But it's going to be a committee of guys guarding him, because you can't just throw him one matchup the entire game. He will figure it out and he will find ways to beat you.
Yeah, and you alluded to it, but with Brunson and OG on the floor, and we're not talking about a super small sample size here. We're talking about almost 1,300 possessions. They have a plus 24.4 net rating. Now, we just made a big deal about the Sixers with Embiid and Maxey on the floor. That was like a plus 11.
Yeah.
So plus 24.4 net rating in almost 1,300 possessions, 1,273 to be exact. 127 offensive rating, which ranks in the 99th percentile. 102.7 defensive rating, which also ranks in the 99th percentile. Some of that does come down to shooting variance. For example, the Knicks are out shooting opponents 39.8% to 31.7% from three-point range. We talk about this a lot, but a lot of times your defensive effort shows up in frequency of three-point attempts more than it does the effectiveness of it. So I think there might be a little bit of Jedi three-point defense there. They're also shooting about 10% higher on long mid-range jumpers. Now, they're an elite mid-range jump shooting team. Like, we can talk about that at times. I think that one is a little more of skill-based. Like, for example, the Phoenix Suns are going to outshoot you for mid-range because they have some of the world's best mid-range shooters.
Right.
Brunson has sort of entered that conversation, so you would get that. But there is certainly, I think, reason to believe it might be like a plus 18 or a plus 16 quality, not a plus 24, because nobody's a plus 24. That being said, regardless of how you rate it, they have been elite with both them on the floor. And I think since January 1st, since the new year, they are 20-3 with OG on the floor. And Brunson doesn't really miss games, so all of those would be with their two. They have been elite. Now, if you're a Sixers fan looking for optimism, I don't think they can stop Joel Embiid if Joel Embiid is healthy and up to speed.
And Mitchell Robinson is a little banged up. We don't know what his status is going to be coming into the series. Hartenstein is going to battle him. He still has the advantage in that matchup. But I think Mitchell Robinson he's an important piece for their team generally. I think he's close to the top of the list in this matchup specifically, because we've seen Joel against, like, if Precious Achiuwa has to play minutes as a real big in this series, I think Joel will eat him alive. And he has in the playoffs before.
So I go back to, of course, what we saw against the Sixers. Sixers, again, lost 3 games of the 4. And the Knicks, at one game, I remember they dropped 125 on the Sixers. They really hung a big number on them as much as we talk about their defense and maybe some low-scoring games. Jalen Brunson was phenomenal. Then you had games where Dante DiVincenzo went off for a stretch. Miles McBride came in, I remember, and had a really good stretch here in Philadelphia where he knocked down about 3-4 threes in the span of 2 minutes against the Sixers and their defense. Looking at Miami and getting all those offensive rebounds that frustrated us in the moment while we were watching it. Josh Hartenstein, also OG Anunoby now on that team.
Well, guess what?
You have to really worry about that with this Knicks team because they go
Knicks rank in offensive rebounding?
Those loose balls. We're at number 1.
First overall.
Number one.
Pretty
They gotta
long
be
shot.
number 1.
Yeah, and they get to those loose balls. So we look at it oftentimes when we're watching the Sixers and saying, get that floorboard. What are you doing? Why are you just staring at the rebound and not being aggressive and going to get it? Diving on the floor for it. Diving out of bounds. Maybe not Joel Embiid, but others can get out of bounds. We know Kyle Lowry and Nick Batum would do that, but you're going to have to give maximum effort against this Tom Thibodeau, Jalen Brunson-led team because that's what they are going to do. They're going to give you their absolute best every time out. And when it comes to their scoring, Dante DiVincenzo had 11 three-pointers in one game to break the franchise record. He got off to a poor start this season shooting from the outside, and then if he didn't break it, he came close to breaking the all-time franchise record of made threes for the regular season. So that's how good the shooting has been. Miles McBride now finding his role with the team. Jalen Brunson being an all-NBA player this season. This is a real matchup. So yes, the Sixers were supposed to be the 2nd or 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference. They are not until they prove otherwise by knocking off this New York Knicks team in a 7-game series. And it's not going to be easy. Joel Embiid, of course, you look at him, if he's healthy, he's the best player on the floor. Very close now is Jalen Brunson because he has elevated his level of play for you to speak about him in that manner. And then it's going to be the everybody else factor that we talked about because you know you're going to get that type of play from New York. What are the others going to do? And this is where we squarely look at Tyrese Maxey against this New York Knicks team and their defense and how you respond to it after having a subpar performance against the Miami Heat in this play-in game. So I'm happy that they're here and that they are playing New York because of the Atlantic Division matchup, because of the rivalry here, because of how many Sixer fans are going to show up at the Garden, how many Knicks fans are going to show up here in Philadelphia. This is going to be a real tough challenge, and it's going to get them, if they're able to get past it, it's going to have them prepared for that next matchup if they are lucky enough to get by this team, because that's how good New York is. So for the people who say you're taking New York lightly, I've already seen where there have been so many people picking the Knicks to knock the Sixers off in 5 or 6 because of Embiid's injury and because of how good the Knicks have been this season and what Jalen Brunson has done to elevate himself into that conversation of one of the best in the NBA. So the Sixers are going to have to show again because of not only this moment now as the 7 seed going into New York as 2 seed, but also they're still fighting against that history of you're not good enough with Joel Embiid to advance any further than the second round. And now we're not in that typical spot of the Sixers being that team that starts their playoff run on their home floor. They're going to have to go into the Garden in a tough environment and win in that place. If they're able to come away with 1 win in those first 2 games, they've done their job to come back here to Philadelphia and see what they do then on their home floor for games 3 and 4. So this one right here is going to be a tough one. This is going to be a fun one.
We all silly like the mayor.